dug this up in somebody's backyard in Klamath
That's
County.
a real
And they got all excited about it, as you might imagine, and sent it up to the State Forensics Lab in Salem, and they spent about a year agonizing over where this came from. And finally, they decided it was a teaching skull. And so they gave it to me. And so that's how I came to have this. You know, there's some real advantage of real bones. We have a real cranium that I have over there, and we'll just leave it there. It's the most pristine cranium. Hey, shut up.
I don't see any matching places.
Siri.
Yeah, Siri.
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 Oh my God.
Siri, I'm not interested.
She won't be so happy now.
Okay. So, yeah, we've got a real cranium over there. It's not open at the top, but it was donated by a dentist in town, I'm told. That's probably why it has perfect teeth. But it's so pristine. Please don't take it out, but you're welcome to look at it. And the things you can really see on that skull that are just amazing that you'll never see on any other model or anything, the nasal cavity is just amazing. Seeing inside the nasal
All intact.
detail, because it gets all broken off so easily. It's so fragile inside, you actually get to see the inside of the nasal cavity. I would advise going over there and looking at it and getting what you can out of it, but really we can get a lot out of this, especially the inside shows some amazing detail in here that you could never get off a plastic model, and it's still in pretty good shape. This part up here that we'll be talking about next week, so we'll use this when we can, and I will ask questions if I think this demonstrates something better than our plastic model. There's a couple questions I would ask off here, but I'll tell you what they'll be. Okay? So anyway, this is a very useful kind of thing. Treat it with care, and might as well just keep it in the box, but please feel free to look at it, okay, whenever you feel like it. And so, what do we got first, Tony?
It says the nasal bones.
The nasal bones. Well, the nasal bones, there's not much. Now, what did I do?
Just says
Trying to
nasal
get
bones.
organized.
Watch the skeleton. Almost
Okay,
did.
so this becomes very useful. Shows the bones in different colors. And the nasal bones are shown in what color do you think?
Looks
White.
like orange.
They're just these two little bones right here, white. Okay, so that's all, you know, and the rest of it's cartilaginous. The rest of your nose is cartilaginous. Okay, so the nasal bones.
And then it says the palatine.
Palatine bone, so that's the bone I went over and got. And the palatine bones were the ones I was talking about that form the posterior 1/3 of your hard palate. And if we look underneath here, and if we look at the hard palate, the posterior part of the hard palate comes from the palatine bone in there. Okay,
Like that lighter color?
that lighter kind of beige color.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Okay,
That's a
is the
palatine
palatine bone, but the palatine bone also, it doesn't show on this model that the palatine bone is one of the bones in the orbit, okay, like that, but it is. And let me show you my little palatine bone that I have here. I don't want to put that there. This isn't a real bone, but they've done a pretty good job with it. If it was real, it would have been destroyed a long time ago. It's a pretty fragile bone. So this is 1/2 of a palatine bone. And so there's another half that's the mirror image of it that would stick up like that. Okay? And so this is the horizontal plate of the palatine bone here. And right on the other side would be a continuation of the horizontal plate coming from the other palatine bone. There's a right and left palatine bone. So this is the horizontal plate, and this is the part that forms the rear of your hard palate. Okay? And so just anterior to this would be the maxilla bone, forming the anterior part of your hard palate up here. Okay, this part, called the orbital process, is the part that sticks up and participates in the orbit. Okay, so you can see from this how this could actually participate in the orbit. This part that protrudes superiorly up there like that. Okay, so that's my palatine bone. I used to have one of every bone, little plastic bones, but for some reason, they're not making those available anymore. I don't know why. Maybe I'll try again this year. So, that's the palatine bone. So what's next?
The horizontal plate.
Horizontal plate. So we talked about parts. Horizontal plate, orbital process are the two parts of the palatine bone.
The next one is the orbital process.
Okay, great, thanks.
Then following it is the maxilla.
Maxilla. So we don't have a separate maxilla, so we'll just use the one on here.
The red one.
Yep. So all of this is maxilla. It's a rather large bone of great interest to anybody who's going into dentistry. Okay. So
And
the red one.
then on the maxilla, was the infraorbital foramen.
Okay, infraorbital means below the eye. The infraorbital foramen shows up nicely on. You can see it really much better on my skull here. See that big hole in there, infraorbital foramen? Okay, yeah.
Then is the anterior nasal spine.
Anterior nasal spine is this part right here.
And then the frontal process.
Okay, the frontal process goes up here. It's really longer than this and articulates with the frontal bone up here. A little skinny part of the maxilla that goes up here and articulates with the frontal bone.
And there's the zygomatic process.
The zygomatic process goes over here and articulates with the zygoma.
And then the palatine process.
Okay, the palatine process. Remember these bone protrusions are named for the bone they articulate with. So the palatine process of the maxilla forms most of your hard palate and articulates with the palatine bone posteriorly. See? Everyone getting a good look at that? Yeah. So this becomes a very useful model.
And then there's the alveolar ridge.
Alveolar ridge, each alveolar process gives rise to a tooth. The alveolar ridge is the whole thing all the way around. What the teeth come out of. Okay.
The incisive canal.
The incisive canal is that one I mentioned. It's the only hole that I can think of on the midline, other than your foramen magnum.
And then there's the orbital surface.
Yeah, let me show you. I think the incisive canal shows up real well on this one. Yeah. So there you can see a real incisive canal, what it really looks like, if you care to look at this sometime. I could ask it off here too. It's nicely demonstrated. See that hole right there? So I would only use this if it really clearly demonstrates something. It's more fun looking at it on a real bone, I think.
And there's the orbital process.
Okay, the orbital process is that part that participates in the orbit. Back in there.
And then there's the zygomatic bone.
Okay, the zygomatic bone is just this bone right here. And it has these little parts that stick out and articulate with other bones. Blue,
Is that
yep.
your cheekbone?
Cheekbone. Zygoma means cheek. Yep.
I thought buccal meant cheek.
Well, The zygoma is this part out here. The buccal region is this part back in here. Yeah. Zygoma is this prominent part out here. This is the zygomatic arch right there. And the masseter muscle slides back and forth underneath the zygomatic arch.
There's a temporal process.
The temporal process articulates with the temporal bone, which is back here.
And then there's the orbital process.
The orbital process participates in the orbit.
And then there's the lacrimal bone.
The lacrimal bone is this little green one. Not shown really very well. But-
Dark green.
Yeah, but it's all we got. Little dark green one.
Can you twist it over here?
Yeah. And see, you've got the nasal bone up here, and then you've got this part of the maxilla kind of coming up in between, and then the next bone back is the lacrimal bone, and it's one of the 7 bones of the orbit. And there's the little lacrimal fossa, which is where you would find the lacrimal sac. If you've ever looked in the mirror and seen a little hole in the corner of your eye, that's where tears drain into the lacrimal sac, and the lacrimal sac in turn drains into your nasal cavity. So tears are produced up here, drain across your eye, are collected in the lacrimal sac, and subsequently drain into your nasal cavity. So if you're tearing a lot, you can actually taste them.
Or you get a stuffy nose.
Huh?
So like people
Yeah,
cry
yeah,
with
right.
stuffy nose.
Exactly. Yeah.
It just asks for the lacrimal fossa.
Yeah, lacrimal fossa, that little thing we just talked about.
And then next is the mandible.
The mandible. Now, didn't I bring one of those? Yeah, I did.
All right, mandible. Oh, crap.
So, cool bone.
Mandible.
The
On
mandible.
the mandible,
mandible?
we have an alveolar ridge.
Okay, the alveolar ridge is where the teeth come out of.
So there's one,
One upper and a lower, yeah.
okay. And then the mylohyoid line.
The mylohyoid line is where the mylohyoid muscle attaches. So muscle attachment. In a real mandible, you could see it more clearly. And remember that mylohyoid muscle forms the muscular floor of your oral cavity. Okay, all under here. Goes all the way around. Attaches here and attaches then to your hyoid bone. Lots and lots of muscles attaching to the hyoid bone.
And then we have the mental foramen.
Okay, mental foramina, there's one there, and there's one there.
And then there's the ramus.
The ramus of the mandible is that flat part there.
Is that what the word ramus means?
Mm-hmm.
And there's the coronoid process.
The coronoid process.
The condyloid process.
Condyloid process, of course, you know what a condyle is. It's an articular process. It articulates in the temporal-mandibular joint. Very important joint. If you have any troubles with that joint, you should take care of them.
TMJ.
Oh, do you?
Lockjaw. My sister does.
Oh.
There's the mandibular foramen.
Mandibular foramina in the back, and that's where your mandibular branch of the trigeminal nerve enters and innervates your lower teeth.
That's what the dentist.
And that's where they put that block, they put a block in there if they're working on your molars back here. I've had it done many times. Delightful process. Stick a great big long needle in there, bring your mouth way up wide as you can, so they can get it way back in there.
Yeah, it was me yesterday.
Oh, were you? So was I.
And then there's the mandibular angle.
The mandibular angle, this part here.
Then there's the muscles.
Okay, and we got a great model here. our half head, as we call it affectionately. It has so much good anatomy on this thing, I haven't even discovered it all yet, there's so much on here.
We have one page.
And we have the orbicularis oculi.
Orbicularis oculi. Let me hold this up a little bit.
And then there's the levator labii superioris.
Okay, levator labii, levator means to raise, and it's this muscle here. Labii is lips, levator labii superioris.
Then there's the zygomaticus major and
Okay,
minor.
we have a pair of muscles, zygomaticus major and zygomaticus minor, right there.
Can you show the levator labialis?
Levator labii superioris.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, thanks.
And then we have buccinator.
Buccinator is this muscle underlying all the others, forms the wall of your oral cavity laterally.
And then there's orbicularis oris.
Orbicularis oris is your kissing muscle or whistling muscle, or what else you go like that?
Smoke.
True? Your smoking muscle.
Depressor anguli oris.
Depressor anguli oris is this one. Oh, no, I'm sorry. This is depressor anguli oris, it's the lateral one.
Okay.
Pardon me.
Mentalis.
Mentalis. And this one I pointed at is depressor labii inferioris. So there's three there. Let's get those again. Depressor anguli oris, depressor labii inferioris, and mentalis is the medial one. Okay. And then masseter is this great big massive one that you can see it in most people. I could see it in a lot of you. Yeah. So. You know, and when you clench your jaws, you can see it flex. Clenching your jaws is kind of to be avoided.
And then we have the sternocleidomastoid.
Sternocleidomastoid, this great big one here.
Is that the one where you turn your head?
Yep. See it right there.
And we have the sternohyoid.
Sternohyoid is the medial one, attaches from the hyoid to the sternum.
Can you turn it a little bit? That's the most medial, so it goes from there
The
all
most
the way over.
medial one. Okay. The next one out, I assume he's gonna say omohyoid.
Yes.
In the middle.
That's the next one out laterally. And the omohyoid can actually be seen. So here we have sternohyoid, just a minute. Sternohyoid right there. And laterally to that is omohyoid, and you can see it coming out here laterally, going clear out there. That's omohyoid. And here's sternocleidomastoid there. So you can see some of these on this model too.
Can you do those three in order? Like from lateral to medial?
Lateral to medial
The three on the head.
on the head.
Mhm.
Okay. Sternohyoid,
Okay.
omohyoid. And we can't see the part of the omohyoid that comes out here because it doesn't go low enough. Sternocleidomastoid.
And then there's the styloglossus.
Okay, so we got this styloid process. Is it shown on any of our crayons here? Ah, yes, good. You see this pokey thing right there? That's the styloid process. It serves as the origin of three important muscles. And the three important muscles are shown nicely on this model. What I would suggest you do is people who are taking pictures come up here and shoot it while I point at it. So right here are the muscles emanating from the styloid process. The one that goes to the tongue, remember glosso means tongue? The one that goes to the tongue is styloglossus. Okay. Then there's one that goes down here. From the same place it goes down to the hyoid muscle. Now where's the hyoid? Down here, hyoid bone. So that's this one here. Okay.
That's the stylo.
That's the stylohyoid. Goes down to the hyoid. You can't see the part that connects to the hyoid. So we have styloglossus and stylohyoid are really easy to see. Your throat is medial to those structures. It's down in the middle. And so the one that goes to your throat kind of goes out of sight. Stylopharyngeus is practically have to come in here and look in here to see it. Feel free to do that. Especially those like Brindle who's taking pictures. Might want to get a picture of stylopharyngeus. Stylopharyngeus. That one going down inside medially.
There we go.
Okay, got it?
And then there's the,
Okay. Want to get that? Stylopharyngeus. Stylopharyngeus. That part that goes down inside.
then we have the digastric.
Okay, the digastric. Going back to this one. Remember we have the mylohyoid, which is the muscle. If this head went all the way around, the mylohyoid would form the entire muscular floor of the oral cavity. It goes all the way around the mandible. You can see it here and a little bit on the other side of the digastric muscle. Remember the digastric muscle is the one that goes through that little pulley and then goes back in that direction. So this is digastric and this is mylohyoid. Mylohyoid, digastric.
There's only two on that side, right?
That's the only two on that side.
And we have the chin.
And I don't think they show very well on this one.
That's all of them.
Okay, piece of cake.
Good, take it over.
Huh? Last
Do you
two?
want to report on our own?
Mylohyoid and digastric.
Right, so you want, how about we just do the head? Because I think we're going to go over. Let's just do the